Buongiorno a tutti e grazie per partecipare a questo webinar che BSI ha deciso di proporvi. Oggi parleremo di quella che è la trasformazione digitale o anche detta rivoluzione digitale, facendolo attraverso un viaggio in quelle che sono i maggiori temi di interesse, quindi su quello che noi chiamiamo, quella che è la nostra stream definita come built environment, e poi attraverso quello che è probabilmente uno dei temi più caldi e probabilmente più innovativi di oggi, che è appunto l'Internet of Things. Lo faremo attraverso i nostri Global Director che tra poco vi presenterò. Intanto mi presento io, sono Fabio Piraino di BSI Italia. Seguo tutta quella che è la stream di certificazione di prodotto testing, all'interno della quale appunto ricade tutta queste attività volte alla digitalizzazione, quindi non solo l'IoT ma anche tutta la parte di BIM, Smart Cities, eccetera. Ed oggi appunto, come abbiamo detto, ci focalizzeremo su quelle che sono una serie di temi molto molto interessanti e assolutamente all'avanguardia. Lo faremo, come dicevo, attraverso le presentazioni, attraverso tutta una serie di considerazioni che faranno i nostri colleghi direttamente da UK. Abbiamo avuto il piacere di invitarli proprio perché, essendo dei Global Director, quindi avendo comunque una visione assolutamente a 360 gradi su quello che sta accadendo a livello mondiale in termini di rivoluzione, di trasformazione digitale, probabilmente ecco, il loro punto di vista, le loro considerazioni e la loro esperienza che potranno appunto portarci avranno quello che per noi potrebbe essere un valore aggiunto. Speriamo possa essere un valore aggiunto. Avremo appunto il Andy Butterfield, che è il Managing Director di quello che è il Global Built Environment per BSI, che ci farà un'introduzione su quelle che sono, diciamo, le attività principali di quella che è la stream che lui segue appunto a livello globale, e poi entreremo più nel dettaglio su quelle che sono le attività, le considerazioni e tutta una serie di approfondimenti sulla parte specifica, quindi sull'Internet of Things. Lo faremo con il collega David Mudd, che appunto è il director per tutte quelle che sono le attività appunto di digital, quindi il Global Digital Product. La sessione, considerando che i colleghi appunto sono da UK ma saranno assolutamente chiarissimi, sarà in lingua inglese. Per qualsiasi ovviamente chiarimento, necessità, siamo assolutamente a disposizione poi per approfondire in un secondo momento. A questo punto io lascio la parola ad Andy che ci introdurrà e ci proporrà le slide che ha preparato per questo appuntamento, e ci rivedremo poi alla fine per fare una chiusura su questo momento di formazione, di informazione più che formazione. Grazie. Ok, Andy, I lead the presentation to you.
Hello, thank you, Fabio. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. My name is Andy Butterfield and I'm the Managing Director of the Built Environment sector here at BSI. The team and I would just like to share with you today some of the work we've been undertaking within the Built Environment sector to help advance a safer, digitally enabled and sustainable built environment. We'll be particularly focusing on a number of areas, including in the broad sense digital transformation, in particular looking at smart cities, IoT and information security. Before I continue, I'd just like to share with you our group structure. So BSI was founded in 1901 and is incorporated by a royal charter, which effectively sets out the terms of our governance. And this is particularly important as the UK's national standards body. This sets out the terms for us being independent and impartial as that standards body. We also undertake a lot of work supporting international standards such as ISO standards, and are able to shape standards where none currently exist. And this is particularly applicable to the work that we have undertaken with smart cities and BIM in particular. Our knowledge solutions team is able to provide clients with support and guidance as they source the standards and look to adopt the best practice enshrined in those standards to help their organisations improve. We're also able to help those organisations train their resources, their staff, to understand what those standards mean and how they impact on the business. We can provide assurance through our certification business. So once an organisation has successfully embedded a standard within its business, we're able to help clients demonstrate that and showcase best practice. And finally, we have a consultancy business where we're able to help organisations with all forms of consultancy. We have a very clear purpose, and our role is inspiring trust for a more resilient world. We work for the public good to improve, standardise and simplify business systems. As an organisation that is non-profit distributing, everything is reinvested back into the business and never distributed. We are completely independent from outside influence and do not have any shareholders. So all profits are reinvested back so we can help the world become more resilient. In today's very complex world, we're finding that organisations find themselves with increasing responsibility to protect the workforce and the communities around them, to safeguard the environment, manage supply chains or be a responsible supply chain member, to embrace digital technologies, very applicable to today's webinar, defend their reputations, secure information and customer privacy. And you'll hear more about this from one of my colleagues later on in the webinar. Sustain and improve quality and prepare for change and the unexpected. BSI these days is a very international business. We enable businesses to turn best practice into habits of excellence and help them on their journey with a continual improvement. Having 84,000 clients in 193 countries, and those clients represent 50% of the Fortune 500 and 84% of the FTSE 100, 81% of the Nikkei 225 index. So we are a very broad international business with an extensive client base. Through knowledge, standards and assurance, we help drive a safer, digitally enabled and a sustainable built environment. 51% of our top 100 global construction companies use us for assurance. Clients from 90 countries use over 190 solutions to deliver services within the built environment. And of our standards, over 3,000 current construction standards are available. As a business, we're very focused on continuing to innovate and enable innovation to drive the sector forward. We're very active in a number of areas. This afternoon, we will be focusing very much on digital transformation and the work where we have pioneered with shaping standards and certification, in particular with digital transformation, such as BIM and smart cities. You'll hear from my colleague, David Mudd, later in the webinar around the work we are undertaking around the Internet of Things and information security. We're also very focused within the built environment sector on improving sustainability of the sector. In particular, we've aligned with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals and are helping our clients do the same. We provide these days a very seamless certification process where we're able to help organisations understand what they need to do to embed a new standard, how to assess their progress with adopting that new standard, and ultimately to receive certification. We've produced tools such as the Assurance Portal, which enable our clients to access critical information on their certification 24/7. We also, as an organisation, continue to focus on collaboration. This is the foundation for BSI and it's the process by which we have shaped standards since our inception back in 1901. We pull together industry experts to consider some of the challenges that industry is facing and to debate and discuss solutions to those problems and to those challenges. And through agreement and consensus, we're able to shape standards. We also work the same way and collaborate with industry stakeholders to shape training and certification, very much involving clients in that very process of innovating. And we're very proud of our activities in building communities the world over to help share knowledge to drive the sector forward. Just to explain more about the structure of the built environment sector at BSI, we've adopted a very simple model, as you can see here, where we provide services across the whole asset life cycle. So here you can see 4 life cycle stages where we have clients where we provide support across the breadth of our services. We support clients such as architects and designers in the design stage of the asset life cycle, moving through to construction of assets, through to the use of assets and supporting asset management, and ultimately through decommissioning. You'll see the 4 horizontal blocks in this diagram which indicate some of the key challenges and trends that we are seeing within the global built environment sector today. And this is very much where we focus on providing solutions across the breadth of that asset life cycle to all clients. These 4 areas are digital transformation, regulatory and health and safety, sustainability, and supply chain and procurement. Today, we're focusing in particular on digital transformation. So let's examine the breadth of BSI's involvement within the digital transformation theme. As you can see here, it's incredibly broad. And whilst this afternoon we may be looking at key topics such as smart cities and the Internet of Things, you can see we have activities across a whole range of digital transformation issues, such as AI or artificial intelligence, digital twins, BIM, and data interoperability and data security. So our activity in helping the built environment sector embrace and adopt digital transformation is very broad and extensive. So now let's have a look at a particular focus on one particular area. So looking at smart cities and the work that BSI has been undertaking over the last few years within the smart cities space. Let's first consider though the rapid evolution that we're seeing our cities undergo in recent years, enabled by digital technology and in particular the connection with the Internet of Things, which you'll hear more about from David shortly. So the challenges for cities to become smart and to become efficient are very acute when we consider that 68% of the world population are projected to live in cities by 2050. Or put that another way, that's an increase of 2.5 billion more people between now and 2050. So I think when we consider that point, the need for cities of the future to be smart, to use technology in a very efficient way is really of paramount importance. And that has been the driver for our work in supporting smart cities. So let's consider what the definition of smart city is. In a time where the term smart appears to be overused and applied to many different aspects of life, smart cities, we have a very clear definition. So a smart city should be described as one that dramatically increases the pace at which it improves its sustainability and resilience by fundamentally improving how it engages society, how it applies collaborative leadership methods, how it works across disciplines and city systems, and how it uses data and integrated technologies in order to transform services and the quality of life to those in and involved with the city, including residents, businesses and visitors. So a very simple but clear statement focusing on some key areas: sustainability, resilience, collaborative working, all underpinned by integrated technologies. So BSI's role has been to help the sector really embrace a new way of working, to ensure that cities of the future become smart, are able to adapt to the innovation and embrace digital technologies. And this has thrown up a number of different challenges. So moving from innovation to global scale, this is very rapid now. The evolution of our cities is moving very, very quickly. Historically, we've seen that cities can be very siloed. So it's incredibly complicated when you're developing a city strategy or a smart city strategy to ensure that that strategic vision applies across a breadth of different structures and organisations. Buyers historically have not been sufficiently engaged, and always trust and security concerns have been apparent. And this is where BSI is particularly focused in helping establish trust. We've had complex standards and a security landscape, so there was a need to look at how BSI could help with shaping standards that provide the clarity and the pathway for city leaders ahead to develop smart city strategies. So summarised here, the process of shaping the standards portfolio to support smart cities needed to be very broad, and it needed to cater for the different needs of stakeholders. So let's start with why, or smartness. Really important that the standards enable city leaders to focus on a strategy. But to focus on a clear strategy, you first need a vision for the city or the community. You need to be clear what your intentions and what your visions are for that city or community in the future. Then you can consider, well, how do you achieve this? So how, once you've developed a strategy, are you able to put the systems in place and the processes in place to ensure that you actually execute that strategy? And for that, we need to consider the what. The kind of solution or application, the technical specification that will support the process and the strategic vision. To help industry with all of these challenges, BSI a few years ago developed a suite of standards to support smart cities frameworks. These were publicly available standards, or PAS standards, and were actually structured along three clear themes. So strategic and leadership standards, as you can see across the top here. Then the middle, process management standards. And at the bottom of the grid you can see here, the technical standards, to enable processes to be put in place and for strategic visions and objectives to be recognised, understood and also achieved. Our work in this area has also gone on to support the International Standards Organisation in shaping some ISO standards that use the content in our PASs to develop a suite of international standards. And this has really helped open up the market, the global marketplace, and aligned thinking in different regions on smart city strategy. In particular, we're going to look at ISO 37106, which was based upon the previous standard PAS 181. So the hierarchy of the various ISO standards, what does this mean and how does this all come together? Well, you can see here from a very simple diagram, if we start at the bottom of the pyramid, very important that the ISO standards were developed for smart community infrastructure. And you can see that ISO TS 37151 was developed for this purpose. In the middle, in red, we have ISO 37106, which is the Smart Operating Model standard, and the one which we will focus on how we've been helping city leaders adopt a smart city operating model. And at the very top of the pyramid, sustainable development through ISO 37101 and ISO 37104. But all this needs city indicators. As you can see on the left-hand side of the diagram here, there are 3 ISO standards that have been shaped that contain those city indicators. ISO 37120, 37121 and 37122. So as I mentioned, we're now going to examine more closely the structure of ISO 37106, which was first developed and launched in 2018 and has become the standard which has been adopted by various cities, and in particular how we've applied this ISO standard to our kite mark process. So we have developed a kite mark certification scheme to enable city and community leaders to demonstrate their best practice through this standard. So you can see there are 4 key areas: delivery principles, which really are a set of values leaders can use to define their strategy. Then we have key cross-cutting delivery principles. This is practical guidance on how to address citywide challenges, joining up silos, so avoiding a silo approach. We then have benefit realization strategy, which is to ensure connection between investments and social and economic and environmental outcomes. And then finally, we have risk management, which is effectively a checklist of issues that a city could monitor to ensure that it achieves its vision, to ensure that it manages any risks that would compromise that vision and that strategic plan. So I just mentioned BSI in our assurance business over the last few years has been working with this standard to develop a kite mark or a mark of trust certification scheme to enable cities around the world and communities around the world adopt the best practice that is enshrined in the ISO 37106 standard. So that kite mark scheme focuses on a number of competencies which you can see on the left hand side here, including citizen-centric service management, benefit realization, strategic management, asset management, digital inclusion, identity and privacy, and procurement. And the 4 principles I just took you through very much apply to the kite mark certification model. But most importantly, this must be centered around citizens and businesses. So the very stakeholders that will live and operate within a city. The way the kite mark process works is it's based upon a continual improvement process model. So, as I mentioned earlier, it starts really at the top of this diagram with setting a very clear vision. From that vision needs to be shaped a very clear strategy and a set of objectives. Then we move around to reviewing the implementation of that strategic plan to ensure that those strategic objectives are being met. And we map and track and realise the smart city benefits. Really, this means we focus on the outcomes, the intended outcomes, to ensure that that vision and strategy is implemented and is driving the change by which that vision and strategy set out to achieve. All of this is subject to an annual surveillance cycle. And this is really key because this ensures that that continual improvement model is adhered to as long as the kite mark or the mark of trust is applied to that city or community. For this process, we've actually structured a maturity model within the kite mark framework, which has adopted 5 different levels of maturity. So starting at the top with level 1, pre-development. This is where a city has not had a clear idea of a vision and the processes to meet ISO 37106. So they're not yet in place. a city or community may be thinking about how it can implement the ISO, but not being able to demonstrate that the vision is clear. Level 2 is the developing smart city. And this is a city or a community that is developing the processes to meet 37106, but doesn't yet have everything in place. Moving to level 3, and this is where Kite Mark certification can be granted. So it's not granted or awarded for levels 1 and 2. But at level 3, for a collaborative smart city, this is to demonstrate where a city or community has all of the processes in place to meet the requirements of ISO 37106. So it's fully implemented the standard. Level 4, a leading smart city. This is a city which is implementing the ISO 37106 processes, but also improving and measuring success. And then we have the final level, or the final tier, level 5, which is a visionary smart city. And this is a city or community which is not only undertaking regular reviews to measure its success, but is also continuing to review its vision and update its vision and adapt its vision and set new strategic objectives. So there are 4 simple steps to consider on your journey towards looking at becoming a smart city or a smart community. And I'd just like to take you through those steps now. So the first step is to purchase the standards. Obviously acquiring the standards and then understanding exactly what they mean in terms of your organisation, your city or your community, and applying those requirements. The second stage is where BSI is able to help by performing a gap assessment or gap analysis, which is simply guidance as to where a city may be in fully implementing the standard and identifying any gaps that may exist. Step 3 is a smart city is awarded Kite Mark certification once we've been able to undertake a full assessment of that city against the ISO standard and grant certification. And stage 4 is ongoing. It's continual improvement, continuing to monitor surveillance audits, and also helping to support with ongoing marketing. So just considering the Kite Mark scheme for smart cities, there are a number of benefits that you can see. I won't read them all out on the left-hand side of the slide here, including, I'm just going to lift out a couple here. So some of the benefits that we've seen are improved collaboration, which is really, really important because of the complexity of developing a strategic plan for a smart city. Embracing digital transformation successfully. So increasing innovation and digital transformation are very much a benefit of the Kite Mark. And there are also lots of different value aspects of the Kite Mark that the Smart City Kite Mark is able to generate, such as helping to attract investment, helping with economic growth, a tool for increased sustainability. So the benefits and the values of Kite Mark certification are very clear. Finally, I'd just like to share with you our world's first, which happened last year. We were delighted to award the world's first Smart City Kite Mark certification to ISO 37106 to Sejong City in South Korea. Sejong City achieved 3rd level of maturity model that I just went through, which was collaborative smart city, and we were delighted to work with them as pioneers. There are a number of other cities that we're working with, particularly in South Korea and elsewhere globally, that are using our smart city standards and also looking at how Kite Mark could help them on that journey towards becoming a smart city. So on this note, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I'd like to hand over to my colleague, David Mudd, who will talk more around IoT and information security. David is our Global Digital Product Director, so I'll hand over to him now. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Hello, everybody. As Andy has said, my name is David Mudd. I'm responsible for digital product certification within BSI. That involves Internet of Things products, software apps, as well as digital construction. So I work globally with our team and with clients to provide assurance services to give our clients and their customers confidence that digital and connected products will work safely, securely, interoperably with everything else as they should throughout their intended life. As you can imagine, it's a fast-changing area, and this is particularly important when there is so much expectation and reliance around these products, yet standards and regulation are, at the moment, still lagging behind. And so BSI is at the forefront of this all the way across, from driving forward best practice and standards, all the way through to providing assurance and training services and consultancy around this as well. So my main role really is focusing on assurance, best practice, and trust around IoT and connected devices. So what I'm going to do today is give you a little bit of background and further to Andy has already explained. One of our key roles here is to share knowledge and to help empower our clients. I'm going to do some of that today, really, showing you some of the opportunities and the potential value that IoT and other emerging technologies can bring, but then kind of bring it all down to earth, really, with where are we actually right now with a lot of these technologies, what are the key issues, and then finally share with you all some pragmatic steps that all of you, no matter what part of the industry you're from or what particular stakeholder group you belong to, there are pragmatic steps you can all take right now for successful initial engagement. And as you will see, it's very important that all organizations, as part of their overall resilience model, start to engage with these technologies as soon as they can, but do it in a controlled fashion. So background then. First of all, I just want to examine for a moment really what we think makes a smart building. So we might consider that it is being connected to the internet. Think of Internet of Things devices. More and more now we're talking about hyperconnectivity, ultra-fast connectivity with technologies such as 5G, next generation Wi-Fi, etc. And we're now starting to see the emergence of artificial intelligence. And I think the really important point that we're seeing here is the convergence of these three technologies is what really brings that smart concept to life. You can imagine then that IoT devices, be they sensors such as, say, a light level detector or a presence detector, or actuators such as the smart lock, they become the senses and muscles of the smart building. The high-speed connectivity, such as 5G, then becomes the nervous system. And you can think of AI as the brain. And then between and around all of these particular organs of the smart body, you have data, and more data. And this is the model that we see that really brings that smart building, that concept to life. So it's not just being able to sense things or be able to act on things. You have to have the communications to actually bring that to life and the artificial intelligence to actually turn that data into actionable information and act on it. These things together really bring that smart concept to life. So what is the Internet of Things? Basically, it's where the digital and the physical worlds meet. There's a great graphic from Freescale from a few years ago, and it just shows right now the scale of this in our society today, from smart cars to smart cows, from smart hospitals to smart hairdryers. Everything is becoming connected. Everything then is generating data, and speaking to each other. So IoT is where the digital and the physical worlds meet. Artificial intelligence, what is this about? Basically, it's about making better decisions quicker. Artificial intelligence can process huge data volumes at a speed unimaginable even 20 years ago. And it works, it does not stop, it keeps working. And to a certain extent, it's error-free in as much as it works in a controlled and repeatable fashion. So artificial intelligence, making better decisions quicker. Hyperconnectivity and 5G, what's that about? That's about much more, much faster. So a very high data rate, low latency. What does that mean? Well, if you've ever used virtual reality or augmented reality technology, you might have seen as you move your head with the headset on, very, very slight blurring or delay. And that's caused by this latency in information going from one point to another. May only be a very small amount, maybe 30 to 50 milliseconds, but it's enough to cause disorientation and in extreme cases, maybe even illness, and even to be an obstacle for using 5G in some high-risk applications. With 5G, bam, that's gone. And then the other aspect of it is a lot more connections and a lot more capacity. So 5G, much more, much faster. Another important thing to consider when you're talking about the smart technology is on that path to adoption, it means two things. We're talking about doing things better, and that's optimization. So here in the built environment, we might consider the systems that we're used to, the HVAC, fire detection, security systems, lighting control, utilities, and many more. And the smart technology can really optimize those, make them more efficient, higher availability, low running costs, etc. And then transformation, that's the exciting point we're really seeing now. That changes the way the building then interacts with the people who are using it. And wider than that, it changes the way the building interacts with the wider community, with the city, with other cities, with the transport system, with the other networks. And suddenly it just transforms the whole of society through that connectivity. So there's doing things better, optimization, and doing new things, transformation. They have slightly different opportunity and business models associated with them. With optimization, it's about efficiency, reducing operating costs, improving availability, being able to predict when things are going to fail, thereby sending the right resource to the right place at the right time, improving availability and reducing cost, reducing stock. So all these things fit into a more sustainable, ongoing management of a facility or an asset. So it's relatively low risk. The rewards may be slightly lower than we'll come on to with transformation, but there are clear benefits and a clear business case and some clear value. The area where a lot of the discussion goes around smart technology is on the transformation. This is all about new experiences, new value, new revenues, new markets, moving to the everything as a service model. So there's huge opportunity here, potential huge rewards, but also higher risk. Andy's already alluded to some of the issues we're seeing at a city level where there may be silos within strategy and policy. And that also goes down to the next tier when you have different systems, different suppliers, and complex systems that are going to need to integrate. Who benefits and who pays? Who owns the data? So this becomes a lot more complex in terms of identifying where's the value and for whom. So when considering moving into this space, you've got to consider then, are we focusing on optimizing or transforming? Both of them have strengths and also associated risks. So that all sounds very grand. What are the current status of these technologies and the issues around with them? So one very important point is this particular graph. This is called the hype cycle, and it's a generic graph that covers almost every new technology we see emerging. And what this says is, as a new technology emerges, there will be an initial peak of hype, potentially overinflated hype around what that technology can do. At this particular point, venture capital companies release billions of dollars, and global organizations might form brand new R&D centers around the world, employing thousands of engineers developing this technology. Then what we see is the technology hits the real world, and we start to see maybe it wasn't quite as easy as we thought. There may be technical issues with the particular technology not delivering as expected, or quite often they're actually related to the business case. Is it actually delivering that return on investment? And you see a slide down into a trough where that initial hype turns to disillusionment. Then after that, you'll see a recovery there to a more balanced approach. And what this is showing for 2019 is that IoT and the various aspects of it here are all over this peak of inflated hype and a trough of disillusionment. And what that means is there's a lot of technology out there with a lot of money invested into it where the accountants are maybe looking at their calendars and their watches, they're saying, when are we going to get our money back? And a lot of pressure now for technology to find a home more than to solve a problem and to start getting revenue. And then some of the key issues, such as things like security, which I'll come on to, may not be front and center. So there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of risk. That's for IoT. And then the other technologies I've referred to, such as hyperconnectivity, 5G, next generation, Wi-Fi, artificial intelligence, are also maybe even not yet hit that peak hype. So there's that same level of uncertainty and a kind of lack of trust that the technology can actually deliver. So when we're looking at key issues impacting mass adoption of IoT, the number one, as Andy's already alluded to, is security. Now, why is security such an issue for IoT? We've all heard about cybersecurity. We're waking up to that. Cybersecurity has been a long-term issue that we've come to grips with when it comes to ICT technology. Our desktops, our mobile phones and devices, these systems, for a long time, cybersecurity has been seen as an issue. And you'll find they have the physical space, the memory processing power, and the battery life, and there will be the communications bandwidth to actually support security. For IoT, this is coming in from a different angle. This is where elsewhere across society, we're seeing benefits in connecting things up. And security isn't necessarily the first thing people are thinking of. And if you've got a device that's relatively small, that's got to run on a battery and sit in a field somewhere, if you don't think about security on day one, suddenly you've got no physical space, no memory, no processor power, no battery reserve, and no bandwidth left in the comms to actually embody security. And it becomes very, very difficult if you don't consider it on day one. And what we're seeing is there are millions, potentially billions of insecure IoT devices already out there in the market today. There are three problems. One, the devices, you might actually lose control of the device through hacking. Secondly, it might be a door in for stealing data. Or thirdly, the device itself may be hijacked and then used for what's called a denial of service attack. This hit the headlines first in 2016 with the Mirai botnet, where many thousands of insecure IoT devices were hijacked and then suddenly used as a botnet attack and took down Amazon, PayPal, Twitter, and Spotify, all caused by insecure IoT devices. So security dwarfs all the other issues. There are others, such as cost, interoperability, which technology will dominate, and technical skills, but security absolutely dominates here with IoT for the reasons that I've said. So the biggest issue here again is that expectations versus reality. Is there trust that IoT devices will actually deliver what they're expected to do without bringing in undue risk? Is the why, as Andy mentioned, the strategy, the why do this, sufficiently bigger than the why not? So what we see is a lot of IoT pilot projects getting off the ground, but there isn't necessarily the confidence to move these to wide-scale adoption across the whole of a global organization and business. Then we come on to hyperconnectivity, in particular 5G. This starts with very, very basic things here, like actually allocation of frequency bands. This is something really at kind of government and state level here that still needs to be sorted. And then you have deployment and coverage. 5G has excellent bandwidth, but actually has very short range. And therefore, you also need a lot more base stations to actually provide reasonable coverage. Plus, it's a new technology. So suddenly the cost then of building this, buying this, and installing this is actually quite high. Furthermore, you need the devices to have that same technology. So you also need to see the device uptake, which has its own costs and complexity as well. So what we'll likely see is that technologies, connectivity technologies such as 5G, will likely deploy initially in hotspots. So a smart community, a smart factory, a smart plaza, a smart hospital, as opposed to wide-scale national or even citywide deployments. And then we come on to the other fact, security and privacy. Any technology that enables good can also enable bad. So suddenly to have masses of bandwidth and the ability to connect many more devices also enables the bad guys to stage even more complex denial of service attacks and ransom demands associated with them, and the ability then to steal huge amounts of data. So we have to bear in mind that this may enable the good, but could also enable the bad. So once again, with the issues about cost, deployment, potential security, we've got to look at, can we yet really trust that return on investment versus the risk? Is the why do this sufficiently bigger than the why not? Then come on to artificial intelligence. There's a big trust here too. Everyone talks about the ethics side of it. Interestingly, ethics and AI has been discussed since before AI even existed, with science fiction writers such as Asimov with the rules of robotics. We've been discussing the ethics of AI, but there are other issues. Are they kind of designed in bias? And also, if it's artificial intelligence has come up with a complex answer here and there are legal implications, how do you actually explain the outcome? So there's big issues around trust, big issues around security. AI was developed in a bubble, in isolation, on supercomputers in academia and national research centers. Suddenly it's out there in the connected world. Is security first and foremost when you're designing an AI platform and environment? What about the data? How secure is that data? What are the provenance of that data and the ownership of that data? Are you allowed to be using it? What are the social implications? The robots are taking our jobs, this kind of thing then as well. Technical skills. So once again, we're back to this whole matter of trust versus risk. Is the why do this sufficiently bigger than the why not? And finally, we come to data. Big data itself has its own issues. Privacy, a very big issue here in Europe, obviously with GDPR. But then there's also the ownership as well. Who actually owns the data? And the more you get to higher level integration, the more of concern about who actually owns this data and your rights to actually process it. But then there's also sovereignty. This is where we can look at three different models. In some areas of the world and some countries, the nation state and protection of the state takes priority and national sovereignty tends to dominate. In others, such as mostly around Europe, the rights of the individual tend to dominate and privacy really dominates. In other areas, it tends to be business and ownership that tend to dominate. And because you have those different paradigms, those different models for how data should be governed, the whole of that governance becomes a problem. So besides the basic things you would think of as compatibility and cost, those different models around privacy, ownership, and sovereignty are all obstacles to the mass adoption of big data. So once again, we're back to that trust versus the risk, and is the why do this sufficiently bigger than why not? I haven't really, I've really wanted to put a damper on this. I also wanted to really then focus on, okay, let's put this into perspective. There are some great opportunities out there, but there are some obstacles before we get to the point where that convergence of technologies really delivers that total solution for the smart world we all want to live in. But some example opportunities that are here and now, right, happening within the built environment. And they go really right way through the life cycle. So we can look at construction, asset tracking, and then also asset availability. If I go back to that picture showing all the devices around the world and cars and cows and hospitals and hairdryers all being connected, that has two areas where this really helps. One is in real time, knowing where everything is at any one point. The other is by seeing what happens over time and monitoring use and status of everything is then possible to unsee the underlying trends at a scale never before even dreamt of, to be able to see then how to optimize your stock, your inventory, your stock, and your positioning of stock, and to predict when things are going to go wrong. That helps you either reduce preventative maintenance, changing or maintaining things on spec, whether they're broken or not, or wait until things fail. This massively improves your efficiency. And then also we've got to look at the opportunity for improved health and safety through the use of drone technology and similar for monitoring dangerous environments. When it comes to building information modeling, the ability to pull in real data throughout the life of the project, this really helps ongoing validation of that digital model. So this can really build some resilience and trust in that model through the direct integration of real data about how that physical asset is actually performing. So IoT is where the digital meets the physical, and that's what it does here. And then we can look at facilities management. So I've talked about improving the system efficiency, be that the HVAC and the lighting, security system, etc. but also improves the user efficiency. By the ability to know where everything in that building should be for any one of the users and to have them working in an optimized fashion, that means the user has what they need to hand when they need it, and they have the optimized working environment. So this, again, helps develop the high-performance workplace. And these are the sort of things that are starting to happen right now. So what are the pragmatic next steps that we can all start to take? I've made it sound a little bit scary in terms of the challenges here, but there are ways that we can all really engage with this technology. And the first thing really goes back to Andy's point at the city level, is to start with the why. What's your strategy here? Connecting for connecting's sake is not a strategy. Are you looking to create new values by improving experiences? Are you looking to add to your bottom line by improving efficiency, building resilience? That really, really good soundbite there of using this technology to make better decisions quicker. But whatever that is, are you adding value? Again, consider this. Are we wanting to do things better or do new things? Do we start with doing things better and then see doing new things as the longer term strategy here? Do we start here with the low risk, but keep our eyes on where the big goals really are? This is a really, really important point. It doesn't matter where you are in the industry, or where you are in terms of your knowledge and your experience around digital transformation. This is a very, very simple model that really, really helps build success. So it's a bit of a much used statement here, but it's much used because it's true. Think big, think of that end goal, but start small and act now. So start really with a strategy, some kind of a strategy. What does that mean? With digital transformation, this means how to engage, differentiate, and deliver in the digital age. And then from that, think of what outcomes, what real value we're creating, what extra revenue or what better margins and efficiencies are we impacting the top or the bottom line. And for that, really, you need to consider your use case. If we had that one concept of asset tracking with every one of you listening to this webinar right now, your people, your culture, your process, your product would be different. And that has a huge impact on your likelihood of success and how that strategy and those outcomes will be formed. And from this, you start to look at what technology can best deliver. So the technology really comes once you started to look at what you're trying to achieve and your own particular use case. And then it's so important that your trial is a realistic proof of concept to give you confidence in a scalable solution. Too often I've seen proofs of concept that are some, I'll put it politely, some magic trick or smoke and mirrors to get through to the next stage and release some more funding and hope we can get the thing working in the future. The proof of concept has to be realistic. And what you'll find is it's impossible to start with a strategy that's absolutely perfect. And all of these things will inform each other. So this becomes really a virtuous circle. You'll need to go back from that trial to inform your strategy. And from that, we'll have more actual detailed outcomes that will help really inform and solidify your use case, which will further determine your technology and give you a better focused trial. So this is a virtuous circle you may need to go through 3 times. But to do that on something relatively small, tangible, with some tangible deliverables is the way you build to that long-term strategic vision of digital transformation across your organization. Now, one phrase that's been used a lot here is trust. And this is a key point for us at BSI. So that's trust. Will the product work as expected? Can I trust that data? Security. Is it safe and is it secure? Will it work with everything else? And the really important thing here is not just today, throughout the intended life. And this is an issue we've been addressing at BSI for well over 100 years. So when we put our mark of trust on something, that's our mark of trust you can see in the center here, BSI, and then B for British standards and a V for verified. That's our mark of trust. And that just says one single mark of trust that says this product could be trusted to work as it should, safely and securely throughout its intended life. How do we do this? In the digital space, we have many labs, but we have our digital lab, that really builds on our long history of product testing. So we've been testing products, in particular those with a safety or security function, for many, many decades. So in our lab, we used best practice for test laboratories, but we also have some absolutely global expert level cybersecurity skills. BSI acquired 3 cybersecurity businesses over the last 4 years, and that gives us a pool of some of the highest skilled experts in the world doing work at the top level for UK and other governments. But what we've done, instead of having them stand alone, we've integrated those within our product test team. So when we are looking at the security attributes of an IoT-enabled device, we're doing it from the view of the device, how it's used in that end environment. That gives us a really unique perspective on that. And here we do a full range of testing. We test the software, hardware, all the communication side of things. But also, as Andy has said before, a lot of what we do is extremely collaborative. I'll come on to more of the best practice shaping. But within our lab, we don't just do testing, we do training, but we also hold workshops. When it comes to our mark of trust around digital connected products, we didn't shape that ourselves. We got the key stakeholders, our clients, governments, specifiers, users, a big pool of key stakeholders into our workshops together, into that site at Hemel, into our labs, and said, what does it mean to you? What are the things that are important? What should this look like? And it was that collaboration that really helped shape everything we do. Talking about this mark of trust, this is a really important thing, that this type testing, this is where many certification schemes stop. This is a one-off process and doesn't really give you much assurance about any future products that are supplied or how this product is going to behave in all aspects throughout its intended life. With digital connected products, this is massively important, that this phase, in fact, in many ways is equally or more important than the product test. Assessing the factory, assessing the skills, the processes and procedures that determine how that product was specified, designed, verified, sourced, manufactured, tested, and very importantly supported is absolutely critical. The key risks for any digital connected product are around the design. I've mentioned designing in security is absolutely paramount. Supply chain management. Very few, I would say none of the providers of IoT equipment own absolutely every single aspect of that, and they have key dependencies on their supply chain. And how they manage that, what service level agreements and what risk management they have around their supply chain is critical to actually being able to have assurance in how that product will perform through life. And then support. How does this company look for and deal with vulnerabilities that arise and support patching and notify all their clients and roll that patching out in a safe, secure way? These things are critical to assurance. And whilst security testing, penetration testing, testing in a lab is important, they will not give you much information about these critical factors. So our mark of trust process really focuses on where the big risks are, which is a lot more than just a test in a lab. So we're talking about standards. As I said, they are emerging right now and will change, and we'll see them changing going forward. As Andy said, with BSI, we have the national standards body. We create standards ourselves, but we also collaborate with other standards bodies. And I've been involved very heavily with the European Telecom Standards Institution on developing standards around Internet of Things security. So there is this standard, which will move to an EN standard this year. It's already in draft EM form, and the EM version is 303645. So this is a basic code of practice for IoT devices that gives 13 plain and simple principles, which, if designed in at the outset, secured by design, would mitigate the vast majority of the risks. And these first 3, which are involved default passwords, dealing with vulnerabilities and software patching, if just these first 3 were embodied on every single IoT product, 80% of the risks we see out there would disappear overnight. And that's why the UK government is proposing, within the UK anyway, that these will be regulated as mandatory for all IoT devices. So we've been involved very heavily with shaping this, and we've actually been testing products to this standard for over 2 years now. There's also another really good document come from the USA from their Institute of Standards, and this actually has a large overlap, has 6 basic principles there. It also has a lot of guidance for manufacturers around how to engage with their potential clients to understand key issues around security and how to support it throughout the life. So it's actually a very, very valuable document that that we agree with, and it really endorses many of BSI's principles about security by design and engaging with key stakeholders. So this, again, is very, very good. In advance of globally accepted at ISO level, there are a couple of really, really good standards here that give you a global baseline, and certainly that's what at BSI we use as our global baseline for IoT device security. So when I'm talking about our mark of trust, we're seeing it now start to be adopted in a whole range of places here, from online banking, and this here is a mark of trust for both online banking and app on a mobile phone. Smart locks, other phone apps here. Here's another one looking at smart home security, alarms, sensors, etc. Another one here for a purely digital app for safeguarding tools for small businesses that's now have our mark of trust on it, and is now, as a result of having our mark of trust, is now endorsed by the UK police. And then emergency lighting systems here. The massive advantage that internet connectivity can bring to an emergency lighting system means that tens of thousands of emergency lights across a whole estate can be monitored remotely and ensured that they're functioning correctly. This gives great savings on maintenance costs, but also much more assurance about how that product is working, battery life, and also an unequivocal time date stamp when it can be proven that that particular emergency safety critical product was tested as okay. So this brings real advantage for compliance as well as savings on costs, but also a huge risk. Becomes a very easy potential attack vector for somebody wanting to do damage into that building. Therefore, to go through really rigorous testing around IoT security has been seen as a huge advantage. So just some examples where our mark of trust is being used right now today. So going back to Andy's earlier point about how BSI is supporting across a whole range of needs here, from awareness and shaping of best practice all the way through to helping embed and then really support. So I've talked about assurance, what we're doing there around marks of trust, but we are developing standards. There's one here on software trustworthiness. We're also collaborating, as I've mentioned, with the European Telecom Standard Institution. We're also, through our knowledge systems business, providing very, very useful knowledge. This particular paper talks about where standards are right the way across the landscape for artificial intelligence, in-house training, and we have extensive professional services and consultancy around things like cybersecurity. So we can help you no matter where you are on your journey. Just going to summarize really here. What we're seeing with IoT and connected devices in the digital built environment, there is a trend coming very, very quickly towards us about convergence of connected devices. IoT, artificial intelligence, and things like 5G. That provides the senses, muscles, brain, and nervous system that really brings that smart to life with efficiency savings and new business models. But beware. Right now, there are some key issues here around the immaturity of their technology, so a certain amount of risk, a certain amount of uncertainty and confidence on that return on investment, and that trust will that actual product work securely and deliver what it should throughout its intended life. So what are the smart next steps, really? It's really consider that strategy. How are you going to engage, differentiate, and deliver in the digital age? And do we jump in at transform, or are you looking at starting off with optimizing? And then perhaps think of that grand picture of where you want to be at transforming, but start small, act now. And remember that we at BSI are here to help you throughout that journey. So really, again, we talked about trust here. And that trust, that quality and safety and trust is something our mark of trust has been bringing for over 100 years. So I hope that's really helped inform you about the state of the emerging digital transformation and technologies in the built environment. I'd now like to hand over to Fabio to continue with the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Switch to Italian. Ok, allora grazie a David e grazie ad Andy per questa esaustiva sessione di informazione assolutamente che ci hanno dato, dove diciamo, ci permette di fare tutta una serie di considerazioni, di approfondimenti, quindi di capire quelle che sono le sfide di questa rivoluzione, di questa trasformazione digitale e come in qualche maniera trasformare queste sfide in opportunità. Cosa ripeto un po' quello che è stato detto anche dai colleghi, o meglio lo sottolineo. Noi abbiamo uno dei nostri pillar, una delle nostre, diciamo, la nostra missione, la nostra visione è quella di metterci a disposizione di tutti gli stakeholder, non avendo, appunto, come abbiamo detto, essendo una Royal Charter, non avendo shareholder, i nostri unici referenti, quelli a cui dobbiamo effettivamente poi dare conto, sono gli stakeholder, e a questo proposito noi siamo a disposizione delle amministrazioni pubbliche, dei governi, delle industrie, dei cittadini stessi, quindi ci mettiamo a disposizione e creiamo quelle che noi chiamiamo comunità in qualche maniera per mettere insieme quelle che sono le esigenze di tutti i settori, di tutte le industrie, attraverso quindi la creazione di standard, basandoci su quelle che sono le best practice. Quindi creiamo standard, ma non solo, cerchiamo di creare informazione attraverso redazione di report, di white paper o semplici informative su quelle che sono le novità, tutte quelle che sono le ultime innovazioni in termini di industria, in termini di tecnologie. Appunto, a tal proposito, insieme al materiale di questa presentazione vi forniremo tutta una serie di link che vi permetteranno appunto di poter dare un'occhiata a quelle che sono le pubblicazioni che noi abbiamo fatto. Ci faceva piacere, ne abbiamo discusso se metterle o no, immagini proprio di quella che noi definiamo community, per tornare domani effettivamente ad essere tutti nuovamente insieme quando finirà questa situazione di lockdown un po' per tutti. L'obiettivo è quello, l'obiettivo di tornare a condividere esperienze e competenze ovviamente per recepire e affrontare le sfide che ci saranno domani. Qui appunto un po' in questa slide un po' di documenti, di report che vi invieremo contestualmente all'invio e alla condivisione del materiale che abbiamo presentato oggi. In questa slide, che è quella finale, trovate i miei riferimenti per qualsiasi ulteriore informazione, approfondimento, anche per fare qualche riflessione insieme. Potete assolutamente contattarmi, sia Andy che David e tutti i loro team sono assolutamente a disposizione per supportarvi nel momento in cui vi fossero necessità di approfondimenti tecnici, consigli ed in generale qualsiasi tipo di necessità voi possiate avere in qualsiasi fase appunto dello sviluppo del vostro business voi siate, in una semplice briefing, quindi in fase di brief design, o effettivamente poi nei passi successivi magari di sviluppo avanzato dei vostri prodotti o dei vostri servizi. Rinnovo il ringraziamento per aver partecipato a questo webinar e rinnovo l'invito a contattarci per qualsiasi tipo di esigenza, necessità o approfondimento voi vogliate avere. Grazie ancora, buona giornata.